David HaMelech, was basically the greatest king. I mean, he was an amazing, amazing human being. He was a big tzaddik, big chacham. But when you read of his stories, you read his Tehillim, he wrote most of the Tehillim. He wasn't the only one that wrote it. There was total of 10 people that wrote the Tehillim.
He was one of them.
He was one of the key ones. He wrote the most amount of them, and he put it together. But one of the Tehillim, the first Adam HaRishon wrote. One of the Tehillim, Moshe Rabbeinu wrote. The sons of Korach wrote some. Even though their father was punished, they did a tshuva, and they ended up becoming a very big tzaddikim. King Solomon, David's son, wrote a Tehillim. So there were several people that wrote Tehillim. And actually, Rabbi Mizrahi has just started a series, just in the last few weeks, to translate the meaning of each one of the Tehillim in English. It's phenomenal. I already watched the first one. It's fantastic. You have to watch it. Really, he's really, really amazing.
Oh, you sent me a video and I was supposed to watch it. Remember?
Yes.
But I changed the phone, and then when you have a chance,
I have a package for you before you go with a bunch of things I want you to listen to and watch, because this is going to be your homework every day. Listen to something. You have to listen to something. Connect to Hashem every day.
OCD.
Yeah, listen, watch something, connect to it. Sometimes a book is not the most convenient, because even though, Baruch Hashem, I just finished this book.
Nice.
And it's phenomenal. But you know what? It's not the
English?
most convenient. Yeah, it's in English. It's in English and in Hebrew, actually. I read the English version. I tried reading some of the Hebrew, but
nice.
But the key is that this is something that I can do when I'm on my desk, I'm at home, I can read it, I can study it, I can take notes, and I try to take notes with everything that I read because it helps me memorize it. Plus, it helps me learn it. You start when you're writing something, like you're copying something, you're thinking about it again. So if you're thinking about it again, you're understanding it again, and sometimes you get a new meaning from something that you had a basic understanding of. You get even a more extensive and deeper meaning of it.
The chokhmah opens up.
Right. So, but that's a book. A book is not the most convenient thing all the time. If you're at work, if you're on a truck, you have a half hour to drive until you get to the next location. You can't read a book while you're driving.
When you come in the house and you want to put the CD on, you can
right.
put the CD
That's
on.
the thing. You put a CD in the car, CD in the house, CD in a DVD machine or something like that. You have something everywhere. You're always able to do that, because even if you're busy, even if you're in the middle of moving, let's say you're in the middle of a job, you can put the headphones on and just do your moving. You're not gonna be able to be as focused as, let's say, if you're studying Gemara and that's the only thing that's in front of you. But even if it's in the background, you're still gonna get a lot out of it. You're still gonna learn a lot out of it. A lot of the things that I listen to as far as shiurim is usually when I'm doing something, either when I'm doing some type of work or I'm doing something in the backyard, whatever. I'm doing something. I always have to have something, and I always get something new out of it. So it's just, and again, that could count as, number one, your shiur Torah for the day, your connection to Hashem, your call to Hashem every day, and most importantly, that's something that's going to get you to knowing more and more of why you're doing what you're doing. Because I think that's really one of the biggest problems with today's people, is that there's some people that do a lot, and some people that don't do anything. The problem with both of them is that a lot of them don't know why. The people that don't do it don't know why. They don't know why they would do it, so they don't do it. The people that do it, they were born into it. And some of them don't really go into the studying so deeply. They just do it because their father told them to do it, or their mom told them to do it, or they're little kids, they can't really make their own choices. So their father and their mother put them in a religious school. And in the beginning, they have a very difficult time connecting to Hashem because they don't really know why they're even there. So they do it. And if you don't work at it, if you don't actually look for a connection with Hashem, then what you end up having is that you have this basic knowledge, but you don't actually know why you're doing all of it. So these lectures that you listen to, a lot of them, if it's the right ones, and especially, like I said, I keep mentioning the same rabbis because I think they're phenomenal, and I've listened to quite a few different rabbis, is because they teach you why you're doing it. Why to keep Shabbat? Why to do tefillin? Why to keep kashrut? What's the big deal? So here's what we talked about before, and I think something we talked about last week is about kosher. So I'll tell you from my own personal story. Most of my life I ate kosher meat. But I would eat non-kosher, dairy food or pasta. I think I was one of many people that was doing that. Saying, oh, no, Rabbi, no, I eat kosher. Rabbi asked me, oh, you eat kosher? Yeah, I eat kosher. Oh, okay, but in reality, I'm not eating kosher. Why? Because, and the funny thing is, I'm only learning this after the fact. So I decided eventually, obviously, as I became more and more religious, I realized, listen, I have to keep everything. Because you can't do half of the job. It's either you're doing all of it or you do none of it. You can't just build half the bridge and expect people to cross it. It's either you build the whole bridge or you don't build anything.
Right.
So initially I just did it because I said, okay, you know what? I just have to do it, that's it. But then, Baruch HaShem, he gave me the insight to learn about these different foods and how they start making them. So, you eat pizza, regular place, not kosher place.
Right.
Now you have 5 different pizzerias next to each other. None of them are kosher. They all use the same basic ingredients. You have cheese, you have bread, you have tomato sauce. That's the basic ingredients. But somehow, the taste of all 5 pizzas is not the same. It's different. One guy is this way, one guy is that way. And it's not the bread. It's the sauce. But how could tomato sauce taste so different? Okay, he's using garlic, so he's using garlic. He's using onions, he's using onions. He's using something else, he's using... Still the same basic stuff. How? When you find out, and you could even ask any pizzeria this, what's the number one most tasty thing that they put into the sauce to give it the taste?
The jelly.
Chazir. They actually put pork. So that sauce, you only see the tomato part.
Yeah, thinking it's only tomato.
But what they're cooking it in, marinara. But they're cooking it with pork. Same thing with a lot of different dressings. A lot of different food. I just found out the other day. What is it called?
With dressing for salads?
Dressings, also the soups. I used to eat soups. I used to go to the soup with the onion soup and the cheese. What is it called?
Ready to go?
It's
like in a plastic cups?
No. It's there's minestrone soup. There's different types of soups.
Oh, okay. So
now most of these soups, there's vegetables in them, or there's no meat in them. And they're tasty. So I would go to different non-kosher restaurants and I would have these soups. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not eating meat. I'm eating. What's gives them all the taste? They cook it with bacon.
Wow.
But you don't see the bacon because they just cook it with it. They don't give you the bacon. So you don't realize that in reality, because that's one of the things about the animal pig that's most unique about it, that's actually most disgusting too at the same time.
It doesn't sweat.
Does not sweat. So,
see, I remember.
Right, so it doesn't sweat. When it doesn't sweat, it keeps all the flavor, but at the same time, it also keeps all the diseases. So on the health perspective, it's terrible for you.
Right.
On a taste perspective, it's supposed to be one of the most tasty
That's why
animals.
HaShem said not to eat this because...
Right. So now, but Hashem also told us something very, very special. He told us, He promised us that there's for everything that you're not allowed to have, I'm going to give you something that's equivalent that you are allowed to have. So bacon is supposed to be one of the most tasty meats out there. So there's nothing else like it. Mm-hmm. That's what we complained about for many years. But Hashem said, no, there is something. There's a fish called shibuta. That is very, very common in different parts of the world. Shibuta, it's called. In Hebrew, it's called shibuta. I'm not sure how it's called in English. They say it tastes exactly like bacon. I've never had it personally, but my cousin has. He says it tastes. It's phenomenal.
Has a good flavor. It has a good flavor.
He says it's the same exact taste. People that have had both have said it's identical.
Right.
And it's a fish. I can't even imagine a fish tasting like meat. Shibuta, that's what it's called. And it said, for everything that we're not allowed to have, there is something that we are allowed to have that will be the same. There's actually one of the...
Excuse me, with the fish.
Yeah.
This fish, like tilapia, salmon, like anything with scale is not allowed?
No, everything...
With scale, we are allowed.
Any fish that has fins and scales, you're allowed to have.
fins and scales.
Fins and scales. Anything that just has fins but no scales, you're not allowed to have. It also means that anything that the Gemara teaches us that any fish that has scales will always have fins. But any fish that has fins doesn't necessarily have scales. And that's actually one of the proofs that the Torah is divine, that it came from HaShem, because this is written in the Torah. And the beauty of it is that Hashem told us, listen, I created millions of species. We've documented over 2 million species inside the ocean. 2 million different types of fish.
Wow.
And he says out of all the fish, you're allowed to have the ones that have fins and scales. Everything else you're not allowed to have. And I promise you that everything that has scales will always have fins. But everything that has fins doesn't necessarily always have... Fins is the things on the side. The scales are the things that you scratch off.
Right. We clean it the fish
right.
from.
So now here's the thing. No human could ever guarantee such a thing. To say that everything that has scales has to have fins. You don't know all the fish. A human being can't tell you, listen, go into the ocean and I guarantee that you're going to find a certain fish. How could he know? But Hashem said, not only do I know, but I'm telling you that you will never find a fish that just has the scales. If it has scales, it always has fins. And that's one of the proofs that Torah has to be from Hashem. Because no human could ever make that guarantee. And especially nowadays, when we have all these scientific equipment and these scientists that are constantly spending their life to try to prove the Torah wrong. They're always looking for something wrong.
And they're always agreeing.
Right. In the end, they're always agreeing with the Torah.
They're saying, you know what? It says it in the Torah, and we just discovered this recently. And
they finally caught up. They finally
so many thousand years.
They finally caught up. There's actually something I read about in this book actually in the last couple of days. It's really, really amazing. There's a couple of things. So you have let me see, what is it? Okay, so one of the things that Einstein was considered
Jewish but very brilliant.
Right, very, very, very brilliant guy, and
but not into the religion.
Not into religion. So okay, but he was considered
he had a gift. Imagine if you got into the religion, what kind of tzaddik, chacham that he is.
He would have been huge.
Ooh, what?
So there was actually one rabbi that actually, you know what, I have his name. I forget his name all the time.
Yeah, any rabbi tried to convince him to...
So there was one rabbi.
Oh, that's what you're trying to tell me?
There's one rabbi. True story. I'll actually even have his picture. It's a very famous chacham. There you go. Hold on a second. That's also good.
I'm glad I met Daniel, you know?
Yeah, he's a nice kid. He's a nice kid. And,
I'm thinking, you know, I was always into locksmith or limo or town car. But you never know. You never know. Everything happens for a reason. So
this rabbi.
I think I've seen this picture.
Huge rabbi.
What's his name?
Roxovel, something like that. How you say it in
okay.
Roxovel?
He's from Europe or something?
Yeah. So he...
This was when? When was
this is in the... this, I guess, is during the 30s, the 1930s.
Oh, your screen is correct, huh?
Yeah, it's correct. So anyway, so he was a huge chacham. Huge, giant chacham. So one day, somebody tells him, listen, there's this guy named Albert Einstein. He's the Gdol Ador of the Jewish scientists. This big chacham of Am Yisrael. Why don't you meet him? He says, okay. So he goes and he goes to his room to meet him, and obviously, some people were excited to meet him, to see this. So they go into a room. Less than 10 minutes into the meeting, Einstein comes out, pulling his hair out. I can't believe it. So everybody's like, what happened? What happened? He goes, I've spent my entire life figuring out the things I've figured out. He knew everything that I knew, and he explained it in less than 10 minutes.
Of all the years.
Of all the years that I spent, he knew all of it already from the Torah. And he explained all of it. Things that took me 50 years to figure out. So he explained it in less than 10 minutes.
He was jealous. He was like...
So he's like, I can't believe it. And he goes, so Einstein's saying about him, he goes, he's not human. His genius is not... So the rabbi responds, he goes, if you think that I know a lot about the shtiyot you deal with so much, come study Torah with me, I'll teach you what I really know.
Wow.
The Torah has everything. Everything. And the more I learn it, the more I'm starting to realize that a lot of the things that people are saying that were discovered by scientists, I don't actually think much was discovered. I actually think I'm getting to a point where I'm seeing so many things that are already in the Torah in such a plain way that I actually think that a lot of the so-called discoveries were just people read it there and they knew that the mass public didn't know it. And they said, okay, it's my idea. And people believed them. Like, it wasn't really, they copied it in so many words. So now this book, it's called the Kuzari. It was written about 900 years ago. And it's a phenomenal story, actually, about a king that tested the three major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And he had these three people come and he tested them to see what's the true religion.
This king, okay.
And long story short, by the end of it, he realized that Judaism is the only true religion, and he ended up not only converting himself, but he converted his entire country. It's called Kuzari. And it happened, the actual story itself happened around the 8th century, so about 1,200 years ago.
Wow.
It was a nation of warriors that that ended up converting to Judaism and became very, very righteous Jews. And a lot of people, since they eventually lost the one big war, they ended up spreading amongst the world, so it's very difficult to know who's from there and who's not. But there's a very, very strong belief that the Kuzaris are also in Hebrew called Gruzinim. But for some reason the Gruzinim or Georgians are denying it. Many of them don't say that they are from the origin of Kuzari. But either way, the story is phenomenal, and it's pretty much the king knows a lot about science, Torah, and knows a lot about all the different religions. He's already studied it, and he's asking them different questions. So the responses are different proofs from the Torah of what we know, what's there, and so on. So you have a lot of different things. Now, obviously, the rabbi here, it's Rabbi Yehuda Levi. He is that wrote this book, and he
wrote this book.
He wrote this book
when?
About 300 years after it happened. So it happened. The actual story itself happened in around the year 800. The book was written around the year 1100.
Okay.
1140. So, and he got the story.
Yehuda
Halevi.
Oh, Yehuda Levi.
So now he got the story from the
so he's
current
a
king.
Big tzaddik.
Huge chacham. So this one. So now this rabbi, he's writing. It's pretty much, this is the dialogue. The whole book is the dialogue between the conversation between the three people, and mostly the Jewish guy,
Catholic, Jewish,
Islam, and the king.
And the king. And the king, like the Jewish,
and
so he
concluded. So he converted his entire country. Right. So now, all of these questions are pretty much trying to prove which one is the right religion. Is it Christianity? Is it Islam? Or is it Judaism? And based on facts, based on things that make sense, based on not just saying, listen, it's the right one because you should believe. I want to prove. You have to, proof. Proof is different than just belief.
Right.
So now this book is full of different proofs of different information that we have from the Torah. So now all the information that's here, this is not the source of the information. This is secondhand in essence. So pretty much all the information the rabbi is providing the king, he already got it from the Torah. He got it from the Gemara. He got it from the Zohar. He's got it from the Torah Bechtav. He's got it from the Torah itself. So, but this book obviously is much smaller than the 25 books of Moses or the Gemara and so on. So, meaning, my point here is that this was a much more easy to read book than to study the Gemara or to study even the Torah itself. It's an easier language. So this was accessible to a lot more people than that could actually understand. Anybody could pick this book up in those times, and even today, and figure out what it says, because it's translated in several languages, and it's very easy to read. Right, very easy to read. Whereas the Gemara, not until recently.
Careful, doesn't fall.
Yeah, not until recently, but the Gemara, the Gemara is a very, very difficult language. So not until recently, this last couple of decades, the Gemara was generally in this in a difficult language that most people didn't know how to read, and so you'd have to really get a lot of help to learn Gemara. But so even in those days, in order to learn Gemara, you actually have to learn not just Hebrew, but you have to learn Aramaic. You have to learn really a language that's in today's age no one speaks.
Very hard.
And so, but today they translate it to English and to several other languages. So to say that someone picked up a Gemara and read it, and then found that there's a cure to some disease, or that there's some type of scientific fact in here. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they just came up with it on their own, because not necessarily everybody could read the Gemara. But a book like this, and many books like it, that's much easier to read, anyone can read. So a couple of examples that I found is that one of the things about Einstein, one of the things that he got famous for, is, and other scientists got famous for in the last 50, 60 years, 70 years, is their whole concept of trying to of talking about about physical things, about matter, and about time, which pretty much all these scientists concluded that the whole aspect of time is only relevant if you have something physical, meaning in the world we live in, since we live in a physical world, time is relevant. We have time. We have 24 hours in a day, 365 days a year, and so on. But in the spiritual world, there is no time, because there's no matter. So they came up with this whole concept, and they go into even more details and so on. So when they said this, when Einstein and other scientists discussed this, like, wow, they're so geniuses, what a big discovery, this is so amazing, making a big deal out of it. Oh, wow, Gdol Adol, this guy is such a big chacham. Funny thing is about this book is that he actually mentions it, and in passing even. It's not even like a big deal. He says, is it this page? I'll find it in a second. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so he says, so he starts explaining here we go, here it is. So he starts explaining the whole concept of what angels are, and and how they are different from us, as far as that they are spiritual, whereas we're physical and spiritual. We have a soul and a body. They just have something that's similar to the soul. And he says it. Listen, in levels of the angels, there's no dependence on. There's no forces of nature, and they're spiritual beings, and therefore they do not rely. They do not rely on time. There's no time, in essence, is what he's saying, because they're spiritual. So the point I'm trying to make here is that he already, 900 years ago, 800 years before Einstein was even a thought in someone's mind, already said, the Torah already told us that if there's nothing physical, there's no time. But people that don't read Torah, they don't know this. They think that Einstein figured it out. And the same thing goes with this other thing. Now, in the last 20 years, scientists have been really, really delving into trying to figure out the brain. Trying to figure out, how does the brain work? billions of dollars are being invested into the brain, trying to figure out which part does what, this, that, and finally they're saying, oh listen, we're finally getting a hold of it, we're finally getting close to understanding anything about the brain, and we think that we know maybe 1% of the brain. We know, brain is an amazing machine. We don't really know much about it, but we know about 1-2% of what it does. So after all these decades of research and billions of dollars spent and thousands of doctors and scientists trying to figure out, they say, okay, listen, so we think that the part of the brain where the person is, his memory is in the front. The imagination of the brain, or the imagination of somebody's, is in the middle of the brain, and the, the memory is in the back. So that's what we know about the brain. Okay, so this has happened probably in the last 25 years, 30 years, maybe even less. All these years they researched, they finally concluded, this is what we discovered. If they would have just picked this book up from 900 years ago, which this book, this person got it from a couple of thousand years before that, because it says right here, very, very simple English. There's the cognitive faculty, which he's talking about. The cognitive faculty is the part of the brain that, I guess understands it and can really break down things to understand them, is in the front of the brain. The imagination faculty, which is a person's imagination, is at the center of the brain. And the memory faculty is at the rear of the brain. And the discretion faculty, which is pretty much giving the person the ability to decide what to do, they call it in science, they call it fight or flight. The discretion faculty permeates the entire brain, but the majority of it is housed near the imagination faculty. Pretty much everything they discovered in the last 20 years that they think is the most advanced modern science in history that really, it's already written thousands of years ago, but it's in simple English. It's not like it's not like a difficult language. If somebody said, listen, it's written in the Gemara or it's written in the Zohar is, you have to be a genius to even understand what it says. You have to know the entire Torah to even understand it. A lot of people that are Baalei Tshuva, that are new to the religion, for some reason, they're very attracted to the Zohar, and they try to learn from it. They try to learn Kabbalah, they try to learn things from the Zohar. You really shouldn't mess with it because it's a very, very high level of Torah where pretty much they say that if somebody has learned Torah, from the time he was born until he was 40 years old, then maybe he's ready to start learning a little bit of Zohar.
Wow.
So somebody that just became a Baal Tshuva and has only started to keep Shabbat in the last 5 years, obviously he's not ready yet. For the most of the time. Sometimes,
so that's how powerful
Zohar is very, very deep. But the point is,
the big Rabbanim.
some of them get into it, some of them don't. Not all of them do.
What about like the tzaddik, Baba Sali?
Oh yeah, they know that. Yeah, of course. Yeah, those the huge ones like the Gdoladors, like Baba Sali, like Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. Those big ones. Yeah, they knew the entire Torah.
Baba Sali, they said that he used to cure you, like if somebody was had a disease or was sick.
He was the last of the high level, what they call Kabbalists. Kabbalah comes from the Zohar, and there's Kabbalah that teaches you about the world and stuff, and there's Kabbalah that teaches you how to do things. It's this natural, almost like gives you an ability to do things through Hashem, of course. It's not his ability, it's Hashem. Mm-hmm. But only someone that is extremely righteous, big tzaddik, and most importantly, someone who has a real connection to Hashem can really use these things for, and know how to do it. In today's age, there's really not, if anybody, there's maybe 1 or 2 people in the world that can do something. What do you want? Hold on a second.
Or you want door?
Yeah, he wants a door.
And Baba Sali.
Baba Sali has a few stories.
He was always finding him and always finding him sitting down reading from the Torah.
Yeah. The big sages, the big tzaddikim for them, the biggest ta'anug in their life, the biggest pleasure in their life, was to learn Torah.
To sit in their home quietly.
Anywhere they could learn Torah. So even you actually see there's pictures of Rabbi Ovadia Yosef Zichrono Livracha, and he was one of the times he was in
From Brooklyn.
Rabbi Ovadia Yosef was in Jerusalem. He was considered Gdol Ador. He was considered the biggest rabbi in the last few hundred years. He was huge. He just died last year. And
By Yosef?
Rabbi Ovadia Yosef.
Ovadia Yosef.
Ovadia Yosef. Like Joseph, Yosef.
How old was he?
93 or 96.
Oh, I remember they had a big...
the biggest...
they came to the summit,
Yeah, he had the biggest funeral gathering since Moses. They say over 1 million people showed up to his funeral. It swamped all of Jerusalem. There's people you couldn't even move. Ovadia Yosef. O-V-A-D-I-A, I guess. So him, even in the hospital, when he was, in his last days, there's pictures of him in his bed. He's not doing well with Torah, reading, praying, learning Torah. One of the stories about Rabbi Ovadia that's amazing is he had a very, very unique memory, a very, very unique brain. He was a genius, but aside from being a tzaddik, he was a huge, huge genius. And he had a photographic memory, but a photographic memory that's not like anybody else that has it. So there's one popular story. One popular story is that there was one journalist. There's a lot of journalists in Israel. They like to attack. When they're anti-religion, they like to attack the religion. So there was one journalist that never met Rabbi Ovadia Yosef.
And he's Jewish.
They
always have to say something.
And he decided, he's like, listen, Rabbi Ovadia shouldn't really be the head rabbi anymore. I think he's too old now. And I think his memory is failing him. Like, he doesn't have such a good memory anymore. He's
in that age.
He's older. He shouldn't. He doesn't remember anything. But he had no reason to say. Like Rabbi Ovadia Yosef didn't show any signs of losing his memory. This guy just decided that if he's over 80 years old, he was like 85 years old at the time, then of course his memory should be going. Now, Rabbi Ovadia never really paid attention to journalists, but this one particular one got his attention. So he said, what? This guy wrote this article about me having a bad memory. Invite him to my house. So the guy's like, oh, he's excited, sure. Go to Rabbi's house. Big deal. So he goes, he gets invited to the house. Now, Rabbi Ovadia had in his house a library with somewhere in the neighborhood of, some say 40,000, some say 60,000 books.
Oh, he's walking outside.
Let me see. He's